you say community, Phil?
I think so.
What's up, y'all? How we doing? The Community Guild, the newest guild of our 5 guilds. We just completed our first season. Very exciting stuff. Excited to share a few notes here for y'all. So, Phil, next slide, placemaker. You're crushing it. Keep up the great work. So as some of y'all might be familiar, the Community Guild's mission is to be the cultural backbone for the DAO. We onboard new members, facilitate events, both in real life and online, and connect members to resources, bounty opportunities, and really onboard them to the systems of the DAO. We think about onboarding in 3 steps. First, you onboard to the DAO, then you onboard to a guild, and then you onboard to a project, initiative, or bounty. So the Community Guild was just recently formed, and we really built this from the ground up and built a completely new onboarding flow. So a lot of our time last season was spent really in the operations of onboarding people. And if Phil, if you'll continue on here, a few highlights from season 2. We had Cabin's first ever guild games, which was the brainchild of the Community Guild. These week-long games, they were fun, they were competitive, they were educational. We had one on Twitter Spaces that had really great turnout, and just a lot of really great events. Members completed movement challenges on Strava. They picked up trash in their local communities. They volunteered. It was just a really great event. Congrats again to the Product Guild for bringing home the win. We'll see if you can hold that championship title as we continue on. Another big part of season 2 was the pilot of the guild liaisons role. And this was formed out of a need to deepen the second phase of community onboarding. So we're getting a lot of people coming in the door, joining our Discord, which now has almost 3,000 members. But we're onboarding them to the DAO through one-on-one and group onboarding calls. And then our next step from there is to have them join a guild and eventually, tackle a project. We formed the guild liaison squad as a way to have specific cabin members be experts in each of the guilds. So they know exactly what's going on, how the guild is structured, all the projects that are happening, what bounties are in progress, what bounties still need to be completed. As y'all have probably learned as you've gotten deeper on your cabin journey, there's a lot going on, and I'm up at night late at night scrolling just to try to read every channel, and it's very difficult. So it's just honestly, as the DAO grows and as our city grows, it's going to be impossible for one member to really keep up with everything going on, and that's why we're broken up into guilds and progressively decentralizing. The guild liaisons are part of that mission to champion their guild and make sure that the operations run smoothly within the guild. So the guild liaisons have been housed under the Community Guild, and we're looking to expand those roles, as you'll see a little bit later on in our presentation. So a couple more highlights regarding orientation and onboarding. We completed 20 different onboarding calls and received over 300 respondents to our welcome form. This was a Google form we released as the New Yorker piece was coming out to help sort of channel people through our onboarding flow, give them the resources they need, and also grab some info from them so we can follow up with them and also, welcome them on an onboarding call. So we hosted a lot of different calls. We formed social clubs and built on the already existing social clubs. Shout out to Chalice for really fostering that. And yeah, we had a lot of regular calls too. As you guys know, we have our cabin weekly call on Monday, Friday campfires. We completed DI research, values ideation sessions, and of course, guild games. I'm going to keep it moving here. We had some IRL events in LA, Bay Area, Austin, Toronto. We did a lot of really great stuff. We completed an FAQ drafts on creatorcabins.com. A couple laid back highlights that you're not going to see in the spreadsheet. Sorry, Todd. But we shared music, poetry, dancing, and written passages. We held space for people to connect in casual ways too. Someone wore face paint and did jumping jacks on a Zoom call. someone also dressed in a suit jacket and sweatpants at the same time. We also hosted a call where, the call attendees were actually like laying down during the call. They were, as what we call working from bed, which is kind of a big cultural shift as the remote culture grows. I might have told Kati that I wanted to care for her baby. And we really just had a lot of human-centered and heart-driven conversations, which are really exciting. And that's one of the goals of the Community Guild, to hold space for people to share what's going on. Like, we see this global work environment changing, and Cabin wants to work with that change and meet people where they're at. So yes, it's work, but it's fun too. And this is a space where you can share your challenges, share how you're struggling to create a morning routine or find that work-life balance. And we'll continue to create spaces for people to do so. A couple more things. We have some really exciting stuff down the pipeline. We're bringing on Shadman, who we think is a really unique and well-positioned individual to help further drive our mission to be a super inclusive and accessible DAO. Shadman is super experienced in working on DEI initiatives, and we're excited to bring him on as a little bit more of a regular contributor. We're also going to continue building our onboarding flow for people that are, excited to jump on a call and, turn their video on and chat, but also for people that maybe just want to onboard on their own time and own flow. So we want to create a lot of resources for people to do so. So I'm going to keep it moving. Part of our goals for season 3 is to continue to build out this guild liaison squad. We want to simplify and streamline Clarity as they update their systems as well, and really create a very clean workflow for several different groups. Newcomers that are just joining Web3, just joining Cabin, and just getting familiar with Clarity, but also our regular contributors and our core contributors as well. And of course, we want to continue to elevate the DAO's heart and soul and make it a place where people feel comfortable to be their true authentic selves. Now, here is the budget that we are proposing right now. I want to comment on one shift that's kind of happened on a larger level right now, where previously a lot of the core contributors were taking up to half of their payments in USDC and half in Cabin. There's a shift happening right now where we're starting to pay out core contributors more heavily in USDC. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing the USDC numbers jump up so much. So you'll see our budget is actually has a pretty high amount of USDC. We'll probably end up scaling this back a bit, but this is where we're at right now. So as y'all may or may not seen, my personal role proposal, I've been the co-facilitator of the Community Guild. The new role I'm proposing in season 3, I'll step into the role as Community Lightkeeper and be the lead facilitator of the Community Guild. My goal is to steer our ship, guide our current and future initiatives, and be a beacon for newcomers traveling in from the rough and often confusing seas of the changing global work environment. As Lightkeeper, my goal is to be the welcoming light for our community, similar to a lighthouse or a moon on a dark summer night. And of course, warm and hearty soup may be provided depending on the budget and the previous year's harvest. The Community Guild is aiming to flatten out a bit with me steering the ship. So we're going to have a large amount of smaller time contributors that are working. In terms of how the guild is going to be structured, for next season, I'm going to propose that I act as the benevolent dictator with my ears, eyes, and heart close to the community's pulse and its needs. Together, along with the budding team of community builders, we will act as the voice, tone, and moderators of the community and Cabin's brand. So you'll see right now my proposal is increasing my time to 32 hours a week, or 80% of a full-time contributor commitment. We also have Jackson continue to help out. He's really been awesome working with the podcast. If you haven't listened to the podcast, there's a bunch of episodes out now. Super great stuff. We also have some exciting developments from Chalice, who is going to be splitting time between placemakers and community, which is really a cool change that we're going to see in season 3, where contributors can actually have their roles being paid out by different guilds' budgets. So you'll see that happening in Chalice's role. Shadman's coming on the team to help us with our DEI Jay, plan and execution. And of course, Kati, our MVP of season 2, she is going to take on a 1-month commitment for now to just continue helping. She's been an amazing guild liaison for product, and she's just helps with so much and sees things from so many different points of view. I'm really excited to bring her on for a greater commitment. Also, you'll see the top line at 100% of time for all guild liaisons. I could see this number changing a little bit, but right now we're budgeting, this equal for all the guild liaisons to make up one full contributor's amount of time. And that's something we really see as important to make the cross-guild communication continue to shine. And then the last line in the regular contributors is the undecided future contributor. Similar to the Placemakers Guild, we don't fully know what our needs will be as the season unfolds, especially as we continue to expand our nodes. So we have budgeted a line here for someone to come on as a 50% contributor. So that's really the bulk of our budget. We want to empower individuals to start hosting more onboarding calls. So we reserved 10 cabin per onboarding call once a week for 12 weeks. That's how you get the 120 cabin there. And then just some other stuff. We want to continue to host IRL events. We're really going to have a big focus this season on engagement and retention programming. We're going to really strive to make the Friday and Monday calls super engaging and have different speakers tie into greater themes of the season. And then some miscellaneous budget for an executive assistant to continue helping with a lot of the administrative blocking and tackling for the guild. And then a sort of catch-all emergent budget, which is similar to like a miscellaneous or discretionary budget. So that's the budget for season 3. It's really exciting stuff. It's going to allow the community guild to really step back and elevate the whole DAO's brand and engagement. A couple key metrics are over to the right. And we really want to encourage people to give some feedback and share their thoughts on this. But super excited to continue working with and for this DAO. And I've really, loved every person that I've connected with so far, and excited to keep the ball rolling.
Awesome, JD. Thanks for taking us through that. So this budget is a big budget. This is actually, I think, the biggest of the guild proposals. So I think we should spend some time discussing that here. I wanted to see if folks want to kick this off with any questions or comments.
Yeah, I think just given the fact that we're probably going to have, we're certainly going to have some like hard conversations about where to cut. A natural place to start those conversations might be the place that's grown most substantially from season 2 to season 3, which I believe is this budget. Could you share a little bit more context about, particularly given the increase in contributor roles versus, essentially bounties that are a little less constrained since we pay them out in cabin?
Yeah, this is something that actually just changed in the last couple of days as, some conversations were born out of shifting payments more to USDC. So, for example, the guild liaison roles, Chalice's help in season 2, Shadman's initial bounties, they were all paid out exclusively in cabin. So my understanding was that anyone that was contributing, 8, 10, 12 hours a week would be kind of falling under this new contributor type, USDC heavier structure. I don't think that's something we're like married to, but as our budget was forming over the last week or two here, a lot of this was actually more cabin focused, paid out in cabin. But just based on a few conversations I had with a couple other core contributors, it seemed that some of the more regular contributors would also fall into that category. So I'm not really sure exactly how that lands, but once that information kind of trickled down, it was dispersed throughout the DAO and the core contributor team, those changes were made. But I think, you raise a great point. I think the community is super important, but my personal opinion is also that placemakers, product, and media are equally, or if not more important. So, I think that we definitely have, especially seeing the other budgets and how it ties into the larger DAO's budget. I think, we can definitely adjust this. Also looking at like the undecided future contributor role, like that's probably something that can be removed given we don't have so much clarity and we have, some more wiggle room on, the emergent budget and some other areas as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think this is a natural part of like progressive decentralization and having a bunch of guilds working on different things simultaneously. To try to help with this, Zach, Bill, and I put together some a doc that I just shared in the chat around comp philosophy. I know you've seen this, but for other folks on the call that may not have, what we're trying to do is figure out, essentially what makes sense as to fall into the contributor bucket, versus the bounty bucket. And I think a big part of it is, essentially, as Zach said in the chat, setting up a system by which we have contributor roles where people who have cabin as a primary form of employment and need to use it to pay bills are, sort of in a different bucket in terms of USDC portion, relative to folks who are using it as bounties and maybe not their primary form of employment or primary way of paying bills. So I think this is like a great example of the conversation that we can kick off here today. And essentially, I think we have 5 days before these proposals are going to go live to try to get these things all in the right buckets based on what makes sense for each person. And I think those are conversations that can happen within each guild and then also across the guilds.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, John. Anyone else have any other questions, thoughts, feedback, insights?
I do have more of a comment, JD. Just like seeing some proposals this morning. I know a lot of people were getting proposals in last minute. I think at least for community guild contributors have an interesting situation where almost all of the contributors are involved in some capacity in building like an inclusive and welcoming space. I would love to figure out ways to streamline ownership of that responsibility, and like instead of having it distributed across all sorts of contributors, be like, this is this person's specific OKR that is around like the culture component, and then thinking about it more creatively of like, okay, everyone in the community guild does have an important role to play in building that culture, in building those like mechanisms to make it more inclusive, but how do we like properly incentivize while also not creating like repeat work or repeat I guess like responsibility across different contributors. So that's just a thought that I'm thinking, especially as we need to think through ways to like align incentives and like not over budget certain things.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Chadman. I think it's something that we're going to continue sort of navigating as a DAO. We have so many people working on different things, but also there's so much overlap. And where does ownership of a specific task or mission take hold, especially as we try to build something that's, really decentralized here. And to be honest, I'm not sure, I think I'm super excited to have you, continue to increase your investment and time commitment into cabin. Frankly, as a white man, I don't feel that I am uniquely positioned to make the DAO as inclusive and equitable and accessible as it needs to be. So I'm really excited to have your perspective on a lot of these things we're going to continue tackling together.
Maybe one comment. This is really a question for all the guild facilitators who are putting together budgets. We should maybe think about ways to be sort of consistent also. So there's basically 2 levers for, I think, the budget that matter. So one is like the number of regular contributors, and the other is like percentage time that they spend. And I wonder if we should think about like sort of standards for like what sort of roles correspond to what sort of percentages. And so to bring in some examples from last season, like myself, Roxine, JD, I think you as well, we were sort of like heading up guilds, and I think we were targeted at 40% of our time to do that. And so I think something to think about is sort of how these percentages map onto like some of those benchmarks. And people, we should be accurately representing the time that people are spending. But I also want to make sure the percentages aren't sort of creeping up over time, because I think that's going to be a big driver of our burn rate if that happens.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's also like the DAO's growing. So, we may need more people contributing a larger percentage of their time. But I do think we could benefit from having more standardized ways we're thinking about different levels of contributors. I'm kind of seeing like a growing in the last few months of like 1 day a week, kind of in this like 8, 10, 12-hour range of like, I'm helping Cabin. It's not like my first priority where I'm working, but like I am consistently working and moving things along. And it's not just one bounty. It's consistent work that needs to be, revisited and adjusted throughout a season, or a year. So I'm definitely seeing that as a role. And then also the like 50 to 100, as sort of a thing. Zach, do you have some thoughts?
I was going to say maybe a third lever that we can play here is the difference between a contributor and like contributors versus bounties. And I think like Roxine in the Media Guild, for instance, has done a really great job of like showing us examples of what it might look like to have recurring work, right? Something that has to happen every week, still be a bounty, right? And that's something that we're starting to play with across the DAO. And so it's, that's like another place where we can achieve some balance, right? More of a budget is skewed towards bounties versus more of a budget is skewed towards contributor roles, right? And that Roxine, the innovator. Yeah, Roxine's great. That gives us like a little bit more flexibility and extends our runway a little, especially with regards to our USDC quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely have like, right now we have like the equivalent to like 96K and 200 Cabin is like the fixed amount. We could have that sort of be a more graduated approach where if you're in the, 8 to 12 hour range, it's a little bit different, and, making sure some people still have some USDC, but maybe it's a little bit more bounty forward on that. Chatty Che.
Yeah, I would like to share and just like comment about like bounties versus becoming like having the contributor kind of like compensation. Is that I think something that people kind of glance over, or like it has felt like, is that you can still make a, sorry, I'm at the airport. It is, you can still make a fair amount of like bounty to be substantial. And so it's not, I think there's an emphasis right now of like, I want consistent, but you can have consistency with bounty if that's like built into the infrastructure of the guilds, like in your guys' and the budgets. So it doesn't have to be like, I want a set role. Like you can have a set role by collecting bounties. As a person, I'm just saying that and sharing that as a person who's like the last 3 months kind of consistently done that. And I think to create some structure for that within, like here is the like roadmap to work towards a consistent compensation.
Yeah, so, and Giles, I think maybe last month or the month before, I think you were the biggest earner in all of Cabin, even though you were not a core contributor.
Just snagging bounties, guys.
Yeah. So this is possible.
Sweet. Do we have any other thoughts or comments, questions before we keep it rolling?
Hey, this is Garrick. Thanks for letting me listen. Just kind of observing, it seems like there should be a really good, like, I don't know, protocol, I guess you could call it, in place for how or why or when you transition into like employee versus bounty. So I don't know if you guys have already developed that, but it sounds like that's something that might be needed.
I think we definitely could have clear norms there, Garrick. One call out there, just so everyone knows, we shouldn't be using the term like employee or employment. Everybody, I literally mean everyone, including myself and Zach, are independent contractors here. So we don't have it. The DAO has no employees.
Cool. All right, let's maybe move on. I'm sure we're going to continue this conversation in Discord and elsewhere. Thank you, JD, for taking us through the guild and really bringing the community guild to life, which did not exist before him and Jackson took it on.